Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're doing something a little different, a special deep dive into Mark Shaw's book, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, about, about Dorothy Kilgallen and how her life and mysterious death are all tied up with the JFK assassination.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating story, that goes way beyond just your typical JFK conspiracy theories. This book, I think, does a great job of pulling you into Dorothy Kilgallen's world, a woman who was so much more than just a reporter, right? She was actively investigating the assassination. She was challenging the official narrative, and because of that, she might have put herself in a really dangerous position.
Okay, so for those who might not know Dorothy Kilgallen, can you paint us a picture of who she was? Like what made her such a big name in journalism, especially when it was, pretty much a man's world back then?
Imagine this. The 1930s, a young woman competing with these seasoned reporters in a race around the world, and then she lands this coveted job at the New York Journal-American. I mean, that was Dorothy Kilgallen. She was sharp, witty, and she was fearless. She wasn't afraid to challenge anyone, celebrities, mobsters, even J. Edgar Hoover himself.
So it sounds like she wasn't just writing about, parties and gossip. She was tackling like serious stories, right? Even before the JFK assassination. What was she known for back then?
Oh, she covered everything.
Yeah.
Hollywood scandals, high-profile murder trials.
Yeah.
She even got to publish an early story from Bernard Malamud, who later won a Pulitzer. But what's really interesting is that even with all of this, it was the JFK assassination that seems to have really become her obsession.
And that's where this whole story takes a pretty dark turn, right? Shaw's book suggests that her investigation into the JFK assassination might have gotten her killed.
Yeah, and the book really goes deep into the evidence or lack thereof surrounding her death. Officially, it was ruled an accidental overdose, but Shaw, he points out all these inconsistencies and these unanswered questions. Like, for example, they found 3 different barbiturates in her system years later, and that brings up serious doubts about those initial findings.
That's pretty unsettling. And it sounds like she, like Kilgallen herself, she sensed that she was in danger.
Oh yeah, there are quotes from her columns and interviews where she actually talks about receiving threats and feeling like her life was in danger. She even said something like, "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident."
Wow. I mean, talk about foreshadowing. So what was she uncovering that would make her such a threat? What are some of the key parts of her investigation that Shaw highlights?
So Kilgallen, she just wasn't satisfied with that official Oswald acted alone story. She was in Dallas covering the Jack Ruby trial, and she got to interview Ruby himself, twice actually. She even got a hold of and published parts of his Warren Commission testimony before it was officially released, which, I mean, that was a huge scoop for her, but it also probably put a target on her back. And it was through these interviews and her analysis of the evidence that she started to connect some really troubling dots.
So she was looking beyond Oswald, trying to understand who else might have been involved. Is that where the whole mob connection comes in?
Exactly. Kilgallen she was one of the few journalists who openly questioned the mob's role in the assassination. You have to remember that, organized crime, they were huge back then, a powerful presence in the U.S. And there were a lot of rumors about their motives for wanting JFK gone.
Now, this is where things start to feel like a real-life spy thriller, right? We've got Dorothy Kilgallen, this fearless journalist, and she's digging into this potential conspiracy that could reach, the highest levels of power. Who were some of the key players in her investigation that pointed towards, organized crime?
Well, one of the most prominent figures is Carlos Marcello. He was this powerful mob boss from New Orleans. Shaw's book suggests that Marcello had a big grudge against the Kennedys, especially Robert Kennedy, because as Attorney General Robert Kennedy, he really cracked down on organized crime.
So the theory is that Marcello might have seen taking out JFK as a way to get back at RFK.
That's one of the theories, yeah. And then there's Jack Ruby, right? The Dallas nightclub owner who shot Oswald. Shaw really dives into Ruby's background, his connections to organized crime, and the possibility that he might have been, well, more than just a lone gunman who acted on impulse.
It's all starting to sound pretty complicated and really dangerous for someone like Kilgallen who's actively challenging the official story. Was her investigation just focused on these big names?
Not necessarily. Shaw, he points out that Kilgallen was very meticulous in her investigation. She was looking at everything, every angle. She wasn't, just focused on the big names like Marcello and Ruby. She was looking into the people around them, their associates, their connections to power, and that's where things get really, really interesting, because one of those people was someone very close to Kilgallen herself.
Wait, are we talking about Ron Pataky? Kilgallen's lover.
Yeah.
Now, this is where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah, Pataky, he was a fellow columnist, but their relationship was definitely more than just, professional. Shaw, he describes it as a passionate and complicated relationship full of love and maybe even betrayal. He even suggests that Pataky might have had his own connections to the underworld, and that his role in Kilgallen's life might have been, well, a lot more complicated than it seemed.
Okay, so who was Pataky, and what makes his connection to Kilgallen so suspicious?
Well, Pataky, he was known for being, flamboyant, having this big personality and his connections to the entertainment industry. But there are these hints of a darker side to him too, like incidents of violence, shadowy business deals, and inconsistencies in his stories about where he was around the time of Kilgallen's death. And to make things even creepier, he wrote these poems that seem to foreshadow Kilgallen's death.
Poems. Okay, now you have my attention. Tell me more about these poems and how they tie into all of this.
One of them is called Vodka Roulette, and it's especially chilling because, well, Kilgallen's favorite drink was vodka and tonic, and then there's another one called The Web, and it talks about being trapped and silenced. It's almost like Pataky was taunting her, or maybe even trying to warn her about the danger she was in.
This is getting more and more intriguing. We've got a potential mob hit, a journalist who knew too much, and a lover with a shadowy past. It's like something out of a classic film noir. Yep. But let's step back for a second and think about the bigger picture. Why would anyone want to silence Dorothy Kilgallen? What was so dangerous about her investigation that it might have, cost her life?
That's the big question that drives this whole deep dive. And to really understand it, we need to go deeper into organized crime's role in the JFK assassination.
All right, let's do it. Let's unpack the mob's possible motives, their connections to Ruby, and how Dorothy Kilgallen might have stumbled onto something that put her right in their crosshairs. But first, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be back with more on Dorothy Kilgallen and the mystery that still surrounds her death.
So we were talking about how organized crime might have played a role in the JFK assassination, and how Dorothy Kilgallen might have, uncovered some information that made her a target.
Yeah, it's really crazy to think about, like a journalist being silenced just because she dared to, investigate a conspiracy that could go all the way to the top.
It really shows you how brave and how much drive Kilgallen had. She wasn't like some fringe conspiracy theorist, working in the dark. She was a respected journalist known for breaking big stories, and she was using those same skills to really take apart the official story of the assassination.
And she even got to see the Warren Commission transcripts, right? Before they were released to the public. What exactly were those, and how did they fit into her investigation?
Well, the Warren Commission was set up to investigate the assassination, and their transcripts, they have thousands of pages of testimony from witnesses, investigators, and key figures like Jack Ruby. Kilgallen was one of the few journalists who really took the time to look through those documents, looking for inconsistencies and hidden connections.
So she was basically doing the work that maybe the Warren Commission should have been doing themselves.
You could say that, yeah. She was approaching it like a real detective, trying to put together this puzzle that everyone else just seemed okay with leaving unsolved. And as she went deeper, she started to see a pattern that suggested, well, maybe some very powerful people were involved, people who would lose a lot if the truth about the assassination ever came out.
And that's where the mob connection really becomes important to this story, right? Can you walk us through what Kilgallen might found out about their role and why that might have made her, a threat?
Well, like you said before, there was Carlos Marcello, that powerful mob boss from New Orleans. Kilgallen was looking into his movements, his associates, and his possible links to Jack Ruby. She was also investigating Ruby's lawyer, Melvin Belly, a really colorful character who was famous for his courtroom performances and his connections to Hollywood and the mob.
It sounds like he's straight out of a Hollywood movie, right? The over the top lawyer who's maybe playing both sides was Kilgallen suspicious of him.
She definitely had her doubts. Remember, she interviewed Jack Ruby twice during his trial, and those interviews were set up by Belly. Shaw suggests that Belly might have been more than just Ruby's lawyer. He might have been there to make sure that Ruby stayed quiet and didn't say anything that would, implicate Marcello or any other powerful people.
Wow. Talk about a conspiracy within a conspiracy. So Kilgallen's interviewing Ruby. She's looking into the Warren Commission transcripts, and she's trying to unravel this whole tangled web of connections that points to a possible mob hit. I mean, it sounds incredibly dangerous. Was she aware of the risks she was taking?
Oh, absolutely. Like we mentioned before, there are quotes from her columns and interviews where she talks about getting threats, and being afraid for her life. She even said that if anything happened to her, it wouldn't be an accident. This wasn't just paranoia. This was a woman who knew the kind of people she was dealing with and the potential consequences of what she was doing.
And there's Ron Pataky, her lover. Was he aware of the danger she was in? What was his role in all of this?
That's the big question. Shaw's book really shows the complications of their relationship, hinting at both, a deep love and maybe a betrayal. He suggests that Pataky might have his own ties to the underworld and that his reasons for being with her might have been, well, more complicated than they seemed.
The book also talks about those creepy poems that Pataky wrote, the ones that seem to foreshadow Kilgallen's death. Can you tell us more about those and how they might fit into all of this?
The poems they're definitely unsettling. Vodka Roulette is especially chilling because, well, Kilgallen's favorite drink was vodka and tonic. And then there's another one called The Web, and it talks about being trapped in silence. It's almost like Pataky was leaving clues, either on purpose or maybe by accident about what might happen to Kilgallen.
Okay, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. So we've got this fearless journalist, a possible mob hit, and a lover with a shadowy past, and this thing for writing these cryptic poems. It's like a scene straight out of a Hitchcock movie. But let's focus on the investigation or lack thereof into Kilgallen's death for a minute. What are some of the inconsistencies and red flags that Shaw brings up, and how do they suggest that maybe there was a cover-up?
Well, the official cause of death was an accidental overdose, but like we talked about earlier, the fact that they found 3 different barbiturates in her system, it really raises some doubts. There are also conflicting stories from witnesses about how her apartment looked, her appearance, and the medications that they found at the scene. And then there's the medical examiner who did her autopsy, Dr. James Luke. He later signed her death certificate with the phrase, circumstances undetermined.
That seems like a really important detail. If even the medical examiner had doubts, why wasn't there a more thorough investigation?
That's where the possibility of a cover-up gets really disturbing. Shaw suggests that the medical examiner's office itself, it might have been compromised. Like maybe there was pressure from people in power to make this whole thing go away quietly.
Wait, are you saying that the very people who were supposed to be investigating her death, they might have been involved in covering it up?
That's what Shaw's book suggests, yeah. He talks about claims that the mob had influence within the medical examiner's office, and he even mentions this chemist who worked there, John Bruch, who later came forward and said that he'd found evidence that pointed to foul play in Kilgallen's death.
This is getting more and more unsettling. So we've got this suspicious death, a potential cover-up, and this whole network of connections that points to a conspiracy that could reach the highest levels of power. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. And I think what makes this story so compelling and so disturbing is that it makes us think about the possibility that even in a society that values justice and being open, there are forces at work that can silence people who disagree and manipulate the truth.
It's a sobering thought. So where do we go from here? What are some of the key things we can take away from Shaw's book and from this whole deep dive into Dorothy Kilgallen's life and death?
I think one of the most important things is that we should never just accept the official story without question. Kilgallen's story reminds us to always question things, to always dig deeper, and to always be skeptical of people in power, especially when they have something to hide.
It also shows how important investigative journalism is in holding powerful people accountable. Kilgallen was a real trailblazer,
Wow.
A woman who wasn't afraid to challenge the way things were and to speak truth to power, even when it put her own life at risk.
Yeah. And I think her story, even though it ended tragically, it can inspire us to be, more critical thinkers, to be more involved citizens, and to never stop looking for the truth, no matter how difficult or dangerous that search might be.
Well said. And for you, our listeners, we encourage you to read The Reporter Who Knew Too Much and come to your own conclusions. This deep dive has really only scratched the surface of a very complex and fascinating story. But before we finish up, we want to take a moment to hear a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back with some final thoughts on Dorothy Kilgallen's legacy and the mystery that still surrounds her death. And we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into the life and the very mysterious death of Dorothy Kilgallen.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground. We talked about her relentless pursuit of the truth about the JFK assassination, possible involvement of organized crime, and that unsettling idea that maybe she was silenced because she got too close to a really dangerous conspiracy.
It's been quite a journey. I mean, from her early days as this groundbreaking journalist to her fearless investigation of one of the biggest events in American history.
And through it all, we see this incredible woman, Dorothy Kilgallen, who dared to question the official story, who wasn't afraid to ask those tough questions, and who ultimately might have, paid the ultimate price for her commitment to the truth.
One thing that's really stuck with me throughout this whole deep dive is just how many unanswered questions there still are about her death.
It's a case that's just shrouded in mystery and intrigue. The official ruling of accidental overdose, it just doesn't seem to fit when you consider all the evidence that Mark Shaw lays out in his book.
Yeah, from those conflicting witness accounts to the fact that they found 3 different barbiturates in her system, it seems like someone was trying to hide the truth.
And then there's the medical examiner himself, Dr. James Luke, who signed off on her death certificate with circumstances undetermined. That alone makes you think that he had some doubts.
It's almost like he was trying to tell us something, to hint that there was something much darker going on.
Exactly. And when you add in those claims of mob influence within the medical examiner's office, the idea of a cover-up becomes even more disturbing.
It makes you question who you can trust, even the institutions that are supposed to, uphold justice and be transparent.
That's one of the most unsettling parts of this whole story, the possibility the powerful people were able to manipulate the system, to silence someone who was speaking out and just get away with it.
So after all of this, what can we say for sure about Dorothy Kilgallen's death? Was it an accident?
Yeah.
Suicide? Or was it something more sinister?
Well, we can't know for certain, but Mark Shaw's book really does make a strong case for foul play. He carefully presents the evidence, the inconsistencies, the possible motives, and then he lets the reader kind of connect the dots themselves.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating and something to really think about. It's not about just accepting one theory or another. It's about, looking at the evidence, questioning the official story, and forming our own conclusions.
It's about recognizing how complex history is, how the truth can be unclear, and how much courage it takes to stand up for what you believe in, even when you're facing danger.
So as we finish up this deep dive into the life and death of Dorothy Kilgallen, what do you hope our listeners will take away from this story?
I hope they'll be inspired by Kilgallen's, her fearlessness, her determination to find the truth no matter what. I hope they'll be, more skeptical of people in power and more willing to question the way things are.
And I hope they'll remember that even though Dorothy Kilgallen's voice was silenced, her legacy, it lives on. Her story, it reminds us that searching for the truth is a really important thing to do, even if it means, paying a high price.
And maybe someday the truth that she fought so hard for will finally come out.
Well, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. We encourage you to keep exploring the mysteries surrounding Dorothy Kilgallen's life and death, and to never stop questioning the official story. Until next time, keep searching for the truth and remember that even one voice can challenge the world.